where
that's the one.
Peter Hordachuk came in the interim basis.
Yeah, that's probably where this came up as opposed to.
Were you on the team where Phil said, "Good one, Randy. Good one,
Randy. Good one."
I was also there when they wanted him to weigh in, and he wouldn't do it.
OverDrive is brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Before Frankie C joins us, we got into this with MJ.
Yeah.
So really the concern for me is who plays on the left side of those top two lines, and where do you have Nye slotted? And if Bunting comes back, how does that work?
You weigh in.
Well, I think Nye solidified himself as a top six forward on this hockey club. I thought he came in right away and established himself as someone who was ready to compete at an NHL level. And that's not overly surprising because when you see him, he's a thick body. He can play heavy. He can play down low and win battles on the puck. And I think if you're going to play with a guy like Austin Matthews and like Mitch Marner who want to get in positions to score and distribute the puck, you need a guy who's going to get a little dirty, get the puck, something like Michael Bunting has done. But I think Matthew Nye stepped in there very nicely at the end of the season, into the postseason. And I think that at this point, the top six is for him to lose.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So you already got one guy, so you're just really looking at for a second guy. Now, Joe from the Bridge has it listed there. He's got Järnkrok up top. I like him as a player, but I'd like to see him farther down, personally.
Yeah.
And that's in a perfect world.
Sure.
Like he could
move up
Swiss Army knife. He's a guy, he's a lot for me like Alex Kerfoot, who kind of moves around and does a few different things. Now, Kerfoot could play center. I don't think Järnkrok's a center. I think he's either a right or left wing. But I don't know why, and then he might not be a fit, but I think of guys like Tyler Bertuzzi, who's an unrestricted free agent.
Going to cost.
That's what I'm saying. They might not be able to fit him into the cap structure. I'm just talking about, in a perfect world, is that somebody that fits in a top six that is just a little bit different than the others?
Sure.
I think something else that's nice about being in the top six is consistency, right? You want guys to establish chemistry, get to play together for a little while, know where each other are on the ice. And when you're looking at the roster that we just had up on the screen, it's like Matthew Nye is really the only guy we have permanently slotted there, whereas the other guys, as new as you were just saying, are kind of like Swiss Army knives. They move around. It's like, okay, how do we find a guy that's going to be there?
Yeah, top six left.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Right, that's what the right wing looks like. It's Marner, Nylander, but that's where I think Järnkrok could be that third line right winger. That's a hell of a player to have on your third line, or a really good player. And down the middle of the ice, if you do end up getting a Ryan O'Reilly, then it's Tavares O'Reilly or vice versa. That left side, I keep coming back to it, is when you have the same type of player, then they play the same. Like I know I look through the finals. Barbashev is different than what Marchessault was bringing. You want somebody who can be physical, who will punch somebody in the face. And I know the game is getting away from that, but it's just when you look at the right side and the middle center ice position for those top four, they're all the same kind of temperament. They're all the same type of player. They're star players, but they're all the same type. There's not that bite or a little bit of irritability. I don't know if Nyes has that. I don't think he does. He's a big body. He might develop into that. But that's why I look at, for example, Edmonton's top six. A lot different. Draisaitl's a different star than McDavid. They play different. Draisaitl brings on contact. McDavid he's a freak. But then you've got, in a positive. But then you've got Evander Kane, who's just unpredictable. And he's a legitimate top-line left winger who will fight, who will hit, who will agitate, score, can skate, do all that. I don't know if there's anybody out there that can fit into a top six structure for, the Leafs. But is that Bertuzzi, and is he too expensive? But somebody like that's just different than the rest of them.
Can you go out and get somebody different that can play with the caliber of players that are in the top six of the Toronto Maple Leafs, such as Austin Matthews, put him on the left, and I'm thinking off the top of my head of Pat Maroon playing on a line with Connor McDavid. Pat Maroon had 30 goals, and he was just different. He brought an element of physicality, size. I'm not saying that's the guy,
that player, but that type,
someone who's not going to eat up a whole bunch of space on your cap table, but someone who can bring another element to that line and contribute just by nature of playing with guys that are just going to have complementary roles.
I think early on that's what Michael Bunting was.
Right.
You got him from Arizona. Now he's going to cost you more.
Yeah.
Right. So they're going to have to look at other options than Michael Bunting if they can't spend that money on that left side there.
Yeah, absolutely. Joining us now on the Maple Toyota Hotline is the one, the only Frankie Corrado. Frankie C., how are you today, sir?
I'm good, Jimmy. Are you running these guys over today?
No, I just everything I say is factual. 100% factual.
I know. You're saying they had no one during the Kessel era. The guy sitting next to you actually played on the team during the Kessel era.
I meant offensively.
Jimmy, don't make me come down there, buddy.
And honest to God, Frankie, he did say something like the Frankie C. era as well.
It was in relation to popcorn because Peter said, I was up eating the popcorn. I said, well, Frankie C. had a big lease on that later on.
Honest to God, he's just been taking swipes at basically all three of us.
He took a swipe at noodles to start the hour, Frankie. It's getting pretty tense in the studio.
I'm not going to let you skate by me.
It seems like he's forgotten how many times people have ran over his jackets on the air, his mustache, all that kind of stuff. Pete, it's nice to see you on today, Peter. You've made the panel look much better looking today, so that's great, especially when you're next to Tatti. Everyone talks about analytics. Pete, you and I had an analytic going. I think it was expected bags of popcorn per 60. Just trying to figure out how much we could eat during a game and then eat the post-game meal afterwards.
You know what?
as well.
I went to a movie for the first time in like 2 years with my father-in-law and my wife the other day, and I realized that my wife eats popcorn one kernel at a time.
Oh,
wow.
And I didn't know that about her.
I hope you kept that to yourself.
Because I'm full shovel.
Yeah, the thing is, I don't mind a full shovel, but if you're respectable about it, like there's people that eat like barnyard animals, and you need a dustbuster to go behind.
Frankie C.
You're looking right at one, Jamie.
Really?
He's sitting right across from you. You're looking at him right in the eyes.
Hey, I got work to do. I'm not going to sit around and be dainty about it. I got to plow the food in and crank the energy out.
So it's everywhere. The shrapnel.
No,
you're vacuuming it out of your mustache, and like
the layered butter is dripping on your chin.
Oh yeah, and then he just wipes his hand on his pants, and he's like, "I'm done, guys."
Hey, and then I go, "Hey, how are you?"
Yeah. Well, you know what, Pete? It's funny you mentioned about like the eating the popcorn kernels one by one, because when I first started dating my wife, I was like, we're not splitting appetizers. We're not splitting dessert. It's like, all for one for all here, right?
Splits is the best thing. Are you kidding me?
Well, but it was because, like, when you're on the road and you're having dinners with the guys, it's like you need your own meal, because if you start doing that kind of stuff,
guys don't share food.
Shoveling food. They will shovel it into their mouth, and you're always on the short end.
There's certain food that guys share.
Yeah, but Jimmy T will show up later with advice. But boy, if you don't know the difference between when you're on the road with a bunch of guys and when you're with your sweetheart, I mean that's a big problem.
Why, are you the type of guy that reaches across and like grabs
I'm a
food
share
off the
guy.
plate?
I'm a share. Usually it's a share thing.
Yeah,
but
you're saying I get my fillet and you're reaching across and cutting the piece off.
It's appetizers, dessert.
Okay, so there's certain types of food that you share.
Yeah,
not at the end, like you're reaching across with bread and wiping
the
plate with the gravy.
Jimmy, let me ask you this, Jimmy. How many times have you been eating a meal with someone and you scarf it down, you inhale it, and you look at them and you're like, you gonna finish that? And they're halfway through their meal.
No, I don't do that. I don't invade somebody else's plate. If the offer's there, I dive at it. If there's no offer, I'm in my own zone.
Wow, I don't know.
I did not like. Come on, the Tap Man has some class. Gee.
Everyone has their own etiquette at the dinner table.
You guys, I think I should run a course here.
An etiquette course.
Yeah, with the boys. Okay, you guys do that. Here's how you integrate yourself into society. I mean, you got some work to do here.
On the road, a lot of us. Of
course,
it's you eat and you split the bill, or it's a credit card game and you move on, but. Guys go to work. I don't know how it is in today's game. Like, do you guys still go out for dinner, or is a lot of it provided? I know at home it's provided, right? Like,
I'll tell you a good story about the credit card game. So when you're starting your way in the league and you haven't earned as much money, you go out to dinner. Guys will invite you. Usually a veteran guy will look at you and say, "Hey, pal, don't put your credit card in. It's okay. You're rolling with us. It's all good," right? There was one point during my first year with the Leafs where one of our leaders on the team, Peter, one of our good buddies, Jamie, you know this guy as well, quite well. Yeah. He looks at me and goes, "Hey, you've been on the team long enough now. Your credit card's going in today." I was like, "Hey, no problem. No problem."
Just sweating.
Frankie, were you on the team in the days where we still had to buy our pregame meals at the Air Canada Center, and we would play the credit card game pregame meal? And
Kadri, I was there. I was there the year that kind of got sorted out, but we were still leaving a nice tip.
So that was strategic by you. Strategic by you to show up when the pregame
called up right at the right time.
Because there was a period that year where Nas lost, I'm not kidding, 6 games in a row.
Really?
And just had to buy pregame for the boys 6 games in a row. And it was stiff, too, down in the Platinum Lounge there.
Absolutely. I just remember being a hero, and I got jammed up one time. We were on the road. I think we were in Chicago. I was playing for St. Louis at the time, and I came in kind of to the restaurant and ate my meal with my goaltender partner, whoever it was. I think it was Roman Turek or Grant Fear. And as I'm walking out, kind of the big shot table sitting there. It's Brett Hull and Al McInnes, and I think Mark Bergevin was there. There was like 4 or 5 of them, and I'm BSing with them. And as I walk away, I go, "Dinner's on me, boys. I got you." I gave a little wink. I'm just joking, and I walk away. Next morning, we're checking out. $3,500 bill on my room. I almost passed out right there. It was $3,500.
Oh yeah,
charged to my room. And I did, like, the guy's like, "How do you want to pay for this?" I'm like, like I put it on my credit card. And as I walk on the bus, Al McInnes hands me an envelope with $3,500, and he's like,
"Oh, it's good.
Jammed you up, kid." He goes, "Don't ever say that again." Like, he was funny, but for about 20 minutes, I was like, my heart rate, like I almost passed out. I was so rattled. But
that's awesome. He gave you the envelope of cash. Yeah. I actually heard a story, and I'm not going to get the names right, so I'm not going to try. But there was a rookie on the Raptors, I believe. They went out for a team dinner. They handed the rookie the bill, and it was astronomical. I want to say it was like $20,000 dinner.
Yeah.
And then he didn't complain, and so the next day he got a nice stack of cash to pay for the dinner. But if he had said something and complained about it, he was on the hook. They were testing. It was a litmus test.
You know that, like, you learn that early on. You got to chew on it when you're a young guy, but it's so hard. It's so hard, man. Like, you just want to say something and you can't believe it happened to you. They play so many tricks on you with the bill at the end of the day.
I can clarify an O-Dog Tatman dinner story.
Oh, yeah?
So he used to always say that I'd have all this stuff to eat and then tell him to go get me a burrito. Could you see me telling O-Dog to get me a burrito, and do you think he would do it?
No.
And the true story is he used to always text me, "Jimmy, what's for supper in the media room? Okay, bring me up something."
Yeah.
And so because I had to pay for it, I would then slip in the double supper. And, of course, somebody would look at that and go, "Why are you eating twice?" I said, "It's O-Dog." And the line was, "Tell him to get his own." I went, "Oh, I could do that." Yeah, that won't take me much of a, that's easy for me to do.
At least it's dinner. Every time we're around, even it happened at the Open the other day, RBC Open. It's like, "Get me a hat from the souvenir store." Like, what? One of those hats from the souvenir store. I believe he sent one of the interns to go get it, and it was like an hour away. Like, the guy came back with no hat. There was no availability. Like,
Lucas stiffed him.
That's exactly what it was.
Yeah.
He said he stiffed him, but I don't know. It just,
you could be like Jimmy, where now it's at the point at the Scotiabank Arena where if we're on the air doing the pregame show and the pizza's coming around, like, someone will just voluntarily go get Jimmy some pizza. Or my personal favorite, if it's like 5 minutes to air, someone knocks on the door and goes, "Hey, Jimmy, pizza's here," and he's full beeline right to the pizza, straight back.
They saved me a spot.
Aside. He puts it aside, and he waits for the commercial break, and he absolutely hoops it down.
Yeah, you will tackle somebody to get there. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Veteran guy. So.
I know what I need to do to set the table for Frankie C. That's what it takes.
Exactly. That's why you're a star. And you know what? We should ask Frankie about this buyout here with Oliver Ekman-Larsson.
Absolutely.
I mean, honestly, I like Oliver Ekman-Larsson. Huge fan of him. Vancouver, went big game hunting, trying to land him, but ultimately they've got to flush him out, and it's a massive buyout, and it kind of puts. I know Vancouver kind of needs a reset, but when you look at that buyout, do you think that Oliver Ekman-Larsson will have some legs at some point at 31 years old, and maybe be a $2 million player moving forward for somebody?
Yeah, that's exactly what I see him as. Like, for him to be your marquee guy at this point in his career, really, he has the mileage, he has the injury history, and it was such a short-sighted move by Vancouver to go out and do that. And I think a lot of teams, maybe not a lot of teams, but there's teams that'll they'll look at the run that Vegas had, or they'll look at the run that Florida had more specifically and say, "Oh, we just got to get in. Like, we just got to get in, and we'll never know what happens from there." Like, Vancouver was living by that motto for far too long, and eventually things were going to catch up to them. And now here they are. They got to spend $20 million in real cash to buy this guy out, essentially, and they need to start getting themselves in a good cap position. As far as Oliver Ekman-Larsson goes, serve a purpose on a team as a $2 million player, not have to be in the limelight, not have to play the tough minutes, and put himself in a spot where his body can hold up and, be more of a puck mover and not a guy that has to play in his own end and do a lot of that grunt work, because he's just not built to do that anymore. As a $2 million player, he could probably be pretty effective for someone.
Frankie, see, before you got on, we were talking about who plays on the left side of the top two lines. Nyes is there for all three of us. How do you see that moving forward? Not just Nyes, but who plays on the left side of those top two lines?
Yeah, Jimmy, as you know, that was something you and I were talking about a lot heading into the season, because as much as Kyle Dubas tried to address certain things with the team, with the depth up front, I still thought that was an area that needed to be addressed. And just because your second-line center does have a hard time driving play at 5-on-5, so ultimately you needed someone that was going to be on that left wing that had some speed, some wheels, who could protect the puck down low, someone who could play with Tavares below the goal line and kind of extend offensive zone possessions. And it was almost like a rotating cast of characters. Ultimately, Alex Kerfoot was not going to be that guy. Calle Jarnkrok got plenty of looks there. Even Michael Bunting got some looks. So as far as who's going to be up there now, like Matthew Nyes is a guy who did really well in his short stint with the team. Pete, I'm sure you can attest to this, being a young player in the league. You get your feet wet, you get in there, you get your confidence going, but at some point, the adversity is going to hit. And it happens to every young player. And that kind of time where you're naive to everything, that's going to go away. And now you know what the consequences are. You know what the ups and downs are. Like, it's hard to establish yourself like that, especially as a young guy. Maybe he can do it. He certainly showed that he could in the playoffs, and that's great. So ultimately, you want him to take that next step. As far as the guys that are out there in the free agent class, I think the Leafs have been handcuffed by their cap situation. They're never able to go out and get that $4 million guy, that $5 million guy. It's like they need to find someone on the upswing. It had to be Zach Hyman at 2.5, or it had to be Michael Bunting at 9.25, who outplayed his contract immensely and now is going to price himself out of this team probably. So who is that next guy for the Leafs? I find it hard to believe that it's going to come out of this free agency class just because of the way their cap situation is. Like, they have just over $9 million to spend and they have 10 UFAs. So they're going to have to bank on Matthew Nyes being that guy. But really what it comes down to is they need players to start taking this next step here from draft, develop, Marlies, and be a big part of this team. Because as much as, we're talking about Vegas and this year and their model and how they've done things, Tampa Bay Lightning, who went to 3 straight Stanley Cup finals, they got a lot of players who they drafted, developed, and played key roles high up in the lineup, and that's something the Leafs have lacked here the last few years.
I wanted a quick follow-up on Nyes, and this might be a weird question, but it's always I thought about it when he got injured in the playoffs. And, yeah, I didn't like the play. I don't think anybody liked the play by Bennett, but Bennett, is a guy, gray area, plays for keeps, all of that. But I don't know how you guys felt. You both play juniors, so it's visors. It's not full face shield. But when you go from full face shield to visor, is there a learning curve? Like, sticks, pucks, little punch in the jaw type of thing, like absorbing contact, giving contact? Because that's a one thing I thought about with a guy like Nyes, where you're in a scrum, somebody punches you in the yap, like. Before you had a cage on. Now all of a sudden it's bare skin. Yeah. Is
a good point.
Do you have to get hardened a little bit?
I don't remember. It was so long ago.
I know, but did you go from minor hockey to junior?
Well, that's
was that a big adjustment where it's raw down there and you're in a corner, somebody gets their elbow up, like you absorb that on your chin instead of on the cage.
Yeah. Well, Pete, do you remember the days of going to development camps? And development camps were always interesting, right? Because you had the guys that were drafted out of CHL, and then you had a bunch of these guys that were college free agent tryouts. And I don't want to say that the CHL guys mailed it in at those things, because those development camps are very important, right? But the college guys, they weren't allowed to go to main camp. So their camp at the beginning of July in development camp, like that was their opportunity to try and sign a contract essentially going into the season. And I remember those guys vividly, like laying out, trying to block shots, like face first. And I'd be looking at it like, dude, you don't have a cage on anymore. It's like there is a little bit of an adjustment. And I think some of the guys at that time who had played junior A, like they had gone from visor and then back to cage for college. So there were some guys that had some familiarity with it. But I think if you were like part of the American program, it was literally cage all the way through. Guys are putting their face in front of pucks, and it does take a little bit of time. And I think that's one of those things, like with a young player, you get to the NHL, and Pete, I don't know what your experience was like, but I know for me, like everyone was just a little smarter, right? Like guys were a little more wily, a little more cagey, whereas you could get away with certain things in junior in the American Hockey League. Then you get up to the NHL and you're like, man, that guy literally had 8 inches to thread that puck through there, and he did it in the split second, and he knew I was going to move my stick. Whereas, you know, at lower levels, like you could get away with things like that.
Yeah. Well, and to Noodle's point too, just to go back a second, I think there is a point where you take the cage off and then you get hit in the jaw and you're like, oh, that's a little bit different than absorbing it with the face mask. But I also remember just being able to put the visor on and you just feel like the man instantly. Yeah. You're like, oh, look how cool I am.
Well, you could be a little bit tougher, a little like, I just always, I mean, I was an observer to scrums, a million scrums in my career because you're in the net and it's always a scrum in front and guys are just punching each other in the face and like, you feel like after years of it, you get a guy who's 32 years old and been doing it since 20. Like the guy's just grizzled and his face is just leather, and they just take it and just move on. You know, you're like, but I always wondered now the game getting younger, and a kid that comes from college right into the National Hockey League, and then you go into a scrum in the corner and you get a shoulder in the jaw, you get a punch in the face where it doesn't get caught by the ref. Like that's the adjustment. That's the welcome to the league type of thing where, you know, some guys, it hurts them right away where it takes a little bit. I feel like it takes a little bit to kind of get a little bit hardened at that level.
Yeah. And Pete, let's be honest. Like when we started putting the visor on, how many times do you think you looked at yourself in the glass? Like how many times every practice you kind of looked over, you're like, okay, how's my visor look? How's my shoulder pads look? Is it a little boxy, a little bulky?
Some like, more than others.
I catch guys doing that from time to time.
I didn't have to look in the glass because I'd already done it in the bathroom in the dressing room. Chin straps just the right length, you know, the whole thing.
We talked about the Tat Man. Now, apparently we clarified he doesn't have a basement, so it was dancing in his underpants in the living room in front of the bay window with the
visor on.
With the visor on.
No bay window either. I mean, you know.
Or full cage. It might have been a full cage.
Yeah.
Let's call a spade here. It's not exactly like Lululemon briefs either. These are Fruit of the Loom tighty whities that we're talking about.
I don't know how you'd know that, but nonetheless.
This wasn't a brand new to a visor situation, but Frankie, talking about welcome to the league, my first development camp with the Ducks. So I'd already been wearing a visor in junior, but my first time in the summer going to Anaheim Ducks development camp, we were working on a penalty kill drill. And I'll never forget it. One of my buddies, Matt Clark, was clearing the puck out of the zone, hit me right in the mouth. Oh. My bottom 4 teeth were just pushed all the way back. And I was like, welcome to the NHL moment.
And you're sitting in a dentist chair for 5 hours.
It was brutal.
Like
root canals.
I don't know if Tatti wants to rush me out here because it's 5:26, and I know.
Yes guy, no guy is next. Not just me rushing you out.
I had one situation in the OHL, Pete, playing in Brampton. So luckily my whole family was there. But a puck got deflected. We were on the penalty kill. Puck gets deflected, hits me square in the mouth. Same situation as you. Like the teeth got pushed in, and they had to like crank it back in place. But the best part was it was a Sunday afternoon, so we're going to the dentist, and I'm sitting in the dentist chair, and I realized, wait a second, the dentist is here, but there's no staff here. So my dad was like the dental assistant, like working with the dentist to hand him the tools he needed, and like it was bizarre to say the least.
I love it.
Frankie C., thank you very much, and we'll actually talk with you tomorrow on Yes Guy, the radio show, as you play Yes Guy, No Guy.
Jimmy.
Noodles is on it too. Yeah.
Can't wait.
Star-studded affair.
Yeah.
Great job today, Pete.
Thank you very much, Frankie C. And Peter's doing a nice job and a future guest on Yes Guy, No Guy. Anyway, Frank Corrado joined us on the Maple Toyota hotline. Build your next dream Toyota at Maple Toyota. And Yes Guy, check out Maple Toyota's pre-owned inventory arriving daily. It's time to Toyota. Visit mapletoyota.com, mapletoyota.com.
Did you save one Yes Guy for a Yes Guy After Dark? Oh, you're going to have to trademark that as well?
But Jimmy T is going to show up and he's going to, just burn out the rest of the show.
That's true. We're going to do a lot here. We got half left.
Lots of ground to cover. And the obligatory Yes Guy, No Guy is next. This is OverDrive, watching on TSN 2, listening on TSN 1050.
Yes Guy, No Guy.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, drivers and passengers, time now for the OverDrive edition, fully sanctioned of Yes Guy, No Guy. And here we go. Yes Guy, No Guy. Before we get into this, Dustin Johnson, it'll be explained later, -6 after 2 rounds, T6. Okay, Yes Guy, No Guy number 1. A live golfer will win the U.S. Open or the Open this season.
Ooh. I'm going to go No Guy, just because that's only 2 tournaments. And I just think that the number of players isn't there relative to the number of stars in the PGA still. So I'm going to say No Guy on that one.
All right.
But I do love Brooks.
DJ, I mean, is DJ sniffing?
He is sniffing, but Rickie Fowler's the story. He's 2 under for the 2 holes he's played. He's -10 for the tournament.
Okay, where are the top-end live guys?
Well, Dustin Johnson is T6.
Yeah,
I'm just trying
DJ's there, but who else?
Who else do we have?
I think Koepka's at even par.
I was going to say, where's Brooks?
I believe he's back at even par.
Okay.
Yeah, Koepka's T39, -1 today, even on the tournament.
It's really on DJ.
I'm a Yes Guy.
Oh.
I really do believe it. Like I think these live guys are. I don't know. I might have been in the minority early on because I thought the live was, and I get it. It was, the morality part of it I didn't care for, but I like the fact that there was a competing entity.
Right. You just didn't
because
like
it
the
drove
scores.
the prices up. Like,
yeah.
All of a sudden, well,
look at the
PGA
purse.
Golf, exactly. Like I think it was good for the business of golf for the players that were playing in the PGA Tour for the live to create some competition. Now that they're back again, I'm not looking at the political part of it. I'm just looking at the business side of it, and I think those live players are now feel vindicated a little bit, and they're feeling pretty good about themselves. So I'm giving a yes guy to the live.
I'm going to go a No Guy on that. And we forgot Bryson DeChambeau is at 5 under. And the other thing I'm just going to throw out is the American government is examining this deal to make sure it doesn't violate the antitrust laws, which is monopoly.
I'm sure they'll figure it out.
Maybe. Or maybe.
Cash is king, Jimmy. Remember that.
I know, but I think you want to make the appearance of studying it so you're just not rolling over.
Exactly.
There's a diligence.
We're looking really hard at that. That's what we're doing. Studying it.
Going to take another look here. Yeah, it's okay. Exactly. Yes Guy, No Guy number 2. Tiger Woods said today he'll not be playing the Open. Yes Guy, No Guy. Tiger Woods will play another major in his career.
Yes Guy.
Yeah.
That guy is way too competitive to sit on the sidelines and not play another major. Yeah. I don't know how much he gets hung up on the not as many majors as Jack. I think Jack's at 18, Tiger's at 15. But that guy he lives for the competition. He's a golfer. Yes Guy, he played in another major.
I think what'll happen is, the health isn't good. And all of a sudden, like a month out, there'll be a video of Tiger in his backyard.
Montage.
He's starting to look good, starting to feel good. And then he'll play one tournament and then a major.
He'll make one double and start limping.
Yeah, exactly. The ass grab, and it's like, that's it.
The glutes are not firing.
Exactly. And if it goes south, then you know what? He'll be done. But I think, Yes Guy, he's going to play in another major.
Okay, I had to do some editing there because, Arad used not in the sentence, and you can't use not.
Double negative?
Yeah, you can't do that in Yes Guy.
Throwing the Tat Man for a loop.
That's right. So, I've got another one here I have to adjust. But I'm going to say Yes Guy, he does play another major. So this one is... I'm gonna have to cut it in half. Erik Karlsson will be traded this offseason.
I will say Yes Guy. And I'm saying Yes Guy if I believe that Twitter is correct in what I read. But it seems like the two sides are in agreement that a move will happen. And I think when that is the situation, typically a deal will get done. So I'm a Yes Guy on Karlsson getting traded.
I'm a Yes Guy, and I also think you can be creative where if San Jose's in a rebuild, they'll choose some of his salary. Can you imagine if they made him an $8 million defenseman?
Yeah.
Instead of 11 or 11 and a half. I think he's 11 and a half. I'd have to look, but if you made him an $8 or $9 million defenseman, there are teams that will put their hand up and say, we'll fit that into our cap structure. So you'll pay a king's ransom for a guy that obviously was super healthy last year. He was brilliant. He had 100 points. Like, he was unbelievable.
Probably will win the Norris.
Yeah, so I'm a yes guy on that. I think they get it done. But keep in mind, with the amount of term he has left, he's going to be choosing. You want to win, but you also are choosing a lifestyle. Like, he's not going to want to roll into a city that might not be as desirable.
Hello, Vegas.
Well, there you go. Maybe
he'd also like the tax hit in Vegas better than he would in California.
That's true. Yeah.
I'm going to say yes, guy. He will be traded, but I'm going to just throw this out to both of you. He's actually in better shape now than when he signed in San Jose, isn't he? As a player, he had that leg problem, and he just wasn't very good.
It did. It took him a while to get back, but I ran into him when I was in San Jose calling a game, and he just said he felt great, like health-wise.
Yeah.
So I didn't.
Kind of beat up when he went there.
Well, you don't drill down on like exactly what does that mean, but he just said like you enjoy coming to the rink and you're healthy, so all of a sudden like things just seemed a little bit easier. Like he looked this past season, he looked like that year in Ottawa where he was just ridiculous. Like that's kind of he looked like the old Erik Karlsson.
But doesn't he also kind of enjoy the position of being the, without a question, number one D-man? And when Brent Burns was still in San Jose, was he a little bit like, all right, who's the guy here? Is it you or is it me?
Well,
and
who
he
got
just,
the number one, power play? Who got this and that? You're right. Like if he's the number one alpha dog, we'll call it, like that's the guy. There's a lot of responsibility that comes with it, but you just put your leg over the board, power play, penalty, whatever. Yeah. Like you're playing 26 minutes tonight or whatever. So
and you feel great about it, and it just translates into production.
But at this stage of his career, are you fine if you're him sharing some of that responsibility if there is another guy there? If you're on a deeper team, like look at Pietrangelo and Theodore, like that's two-headed monster there, and they won the cup.
Yeah. Well, he'd probably be fine sharing it, assuming it was a team that he felt had an opportunity to win.
Exactly.
I have to admit, I'm somewhat jealous of athletes because you could be called ridiculous, and it's a compliment. I've been called ridiculous. It was not a compliment.
Honestly,
yeah.
You are ridiculous in a good way. In a good way, Tat man.
That's the first time. I'm sorry. That's the first time anybody's ever said that to me. Yes guy, no guy. The Leafs will make significant changes to their blue line.
I'm a yes guy. I really like. Now define significant. Yeah. That's the one thing I would ask. Like, is that not bringing back?
That's got to be like
Hall. Is that?
That's got to be 2 or 3 changes. Got to be. Yeah, that's what he says. 2 or 3 changes.
Okay, so I'll say two changes. I'm a yes guy on that for sure. And I don't know what that looks like. Now, does that bringing Luke Schenn back or not bringing him back? Like, that's
not. I don't want to say it's not significant because it is, but it's not major. I think that would be a fair assessment of that.
I disagree. So, like Johnny was talking about more offense for this group and all of that. I'm bullish on the fact that I think that this team needs a significant overhaul on that back end.
Well, you're talking big guys. You're talking about Tampa, and you and I talked about this earlier in the week. You want big guys that don't allow you to penetrate and can move the puck.
And it's easy to be a copycat in this league and look at Vegas, what they did.
Well, Tampa, too.
But you're right, Tampa's there. I just feel like even Seattle's D, they were a pain in the ass to play against. Now, that's systematic and the toughness. You had guys like Alexiak there, like they're, just big, mean guys that could skate and play. You don't need tree trunks, like guys that can't move and can't keep up with the pace of the game. But what you do need is you're seeing Vegas, Florida couldn't get to the front of the net. There were 5 guys shrunk down to the front of the net, and then you had 2 big monsters there just clearing it out. There was lanes for the goaltender to see everything. So I think there is going to be significant change, at least 2 players, and it should be upgrades of the players, not just new faces, upgrades where you're like, that's a number 4 and that's a number 2 or a number 1.
We're splitting hairs here on what constitutes a significant change. I'm going to say no guy. I think the Leafs' attention right now is really on the forward group, certain extensions of guys. I do believe that there is work to be done on the back end, but again, coming back to what constitutes a significant change, I'm going to say no guy. I think for sure there's one move. Maybe they re-sign a guy like Luke Schenn, but in my mind, that's not a significant enough, I guess, signing to justify,
big change.
The yes guy, no guy, big change. I'm going to go no guy.
Yeah, I'm going to go no guy too. I just think that, what you're talking about, I agree with. I just don't know you can do it with this group. It would just, you'd have to make too many changes. Well, that's almost a draft. That's like a 5-year thing, isn't it?
Well, it is, unless you can. It's not about packaging up one of your top 4, but it's just being creative. And that's Brad Treliving is a guy, if you look at some of his history, he hasn't been shy to make bold moves.
Yeah.
That's now whether they've worked out or not, that's more in the eye of the beholder. But I think a guy like Treliving will be aggressive. I don't know with what position that's going to be, whether it's goaltending, whether it's defenseman, or it's adding to the group up front. But Tree is not a guy that sits in the sidelines. He'll know the marketplace and he'll be in the middle of it.
Okay. We'll leave that. We've got Bob Weeks coming up next from the U.S. Open. This is OverDrive on TSN 2 and TSN 1050. OverDrive, Jim Tatti, Peter Holland, and Noodles McLennan here. Mail-in and Friday is brought to you by Boston Pizza. Weekends are better with fish bowls and frosty pints on the BP patio. Grab your sunscreen. Let's have a weekend. See you on the BP patio. I'm looking around the studio. I see no free samples, but anyway, we move on. Bob Weeks is at the U.S. Open. Weeksy, welcome in, and Rickie Fowler's red hot, 3 under through 3 holes, sits at 11 under, and it seems to me, you're there, but it seems to me that everybody's figured out this course.
Yeah, they certainly have in the first round anyway, and it's starting to a little bit in the second round. I will say, talking to a number of the players coming off in the early wave, it's playing a little bit tougher. It's definitely playing a little bit longer. They got 2 par 3s that are essentially playing about 300 yards. We heard somebody refer to them as the drivable par 3s, and but Rickie Fowler continues to sort of amaze, and this has sort of been a long time in the working of him coming back and figuring out his new swing, or getting back to his old swing and getting some confidence, and he looks pretty good right now.
Well, Weeksy, that was going to be my question. Is there any surprise from anybody outside of or even inside of Rickie Fowler's camp that he's playing so well right now? Because I know there was a point where he fell outside, I believe, the top 100. He was messing around with his swing. Now he's gone back to the old coach. Like, any surprise here with how he's playing?
I think for the insiders, for the people who are close to Rickie, not so much. He's been working pretty hard. He wanted to make some big swing changes a couple of years ago, and he went down a rabbit hole that didn't work for him. So he went back to Butch Harmon, who was his teacher to begin with, and kind of, I won't say he went back to his old swing, but he rebuilt a swing that's more closely aligned to his old one. He feels a lot more comfortable with it. But you're right. I mean, you go back last year, he didn't make it into the U.S. Open. He was actually the first alternate, and he sat on the tee at the country club last year, hoping that maybe somebody would pull a hammy or something and he would get in at the last minute, but he didn't. And so now he's gone from first alternate to top of the leaderboard. It's a pretty remarkable story of comeback and perseverance. But I think Rickie is so well liked out here that everyone is just super happy for him.
DJ and Rory are both in contention. Can one of them break through and win it?
Yeah, I don't know. The DJ today started off with a quadruple bogey on one of the early holes. He hit it into the barranca here, which I've learned is Spanish for a big ditch. And he couldn't get it out.
Got to remember that.
Get it out. He couldn't get it out, and had to take a penalty, and he took a quadruple bogey 8. And I can tell you that the only person I know who's won anything with making a quad is Elvis Stoico. So he may still be, he got it back.
Weeksy.
He made 5 more birdies. I know, I'm sorry. But
I love it.
I know he, listen, he climbed back to shoot a good round, but if you take that quad away, make it a double or make it a bogey, he's right up near the top of the lead instead of sort of chasing the lead. So that could have a big effect in the long scheme of things over 72 holes, but he's putting really, really well right now. And when Dustin Johnson putts well, the scores are usually pretty low.
I play that game with myself all the time, Weeksy. When I go, if I just took off that double par off my card, man, I would have broke 80.
Exactly. We all do that.
What in your mind is the biggest challenge at the LA Country Club? Because obviously guys are going a lot lower than typical U.S. Opens. And typically the MO, as we all know, is guys aren't this low this early on. So where are you seeing sort of the biggest challenge for guys moving forward into the weekend?
So the reason there's a lot of low scores early on is it's been a pretty sort of, I don't know what you call it, damp June here in LA, which is obviously just a shock. And there were a lot of cloudy days here, and they didn't dry things out. It's actually just before you guys called. The sun has come out. It started to get baked now, and you can see how already this is going to change. So, it's unfortunate because it does not, like, the first round and a half is not played like a typical U.S. Open, because it's been sort of soft and it's been gettable. We had those 262s yesterday. And now I think it's going to start to get tough. So now it becomes as much a mental challenge as it does a physical challenge. You have got to be ready to accept the fact that you're going to make some bad shots. You're going to get some bad breaks. You're going to end up in the deep rough when your ball bounces, takes a crazy bounce out from the fairway. So it's going to get ugly here, I think, before too long. And I think by the weekend you'll see these scores. I mean, I'd be surprised if 8 or 9 or 10 under isn't the winning score here. It could even go backwards a little bit on the weekend.
Weeksy, thanks for your time and appreciate the comedic stylings.
Okay, guys. Have a good Friday, everybody.
Barenko, isn't it? Isn't that what it's called?
Barenka, yeah.
Barenka. Yeah. I feel like when I was younger, I've woken up in a few Barenkas ditches.
That's Frankie sees Home Away from Home, the Barenka.
I love it.
I think the groundskeeper on that particular facility could write a book on just weirdo weather conditions because, California was drought-ridden for a long time, and then it got flood-ridden. I mean, that's bizarre.
Right. Well, if that course seems, we were talking about it earlier, seems a little bit easier, that's why the scores are lower. Like, I don't know if that's a good thing or not, because I kind of like chaos golf a little bit. I don't mind guys struggling in the rough. You want to see these great shots out of that. So.
But if he's right, and there's nothing to assume that he wouldn't be right, if the conditions change and you're Rickie Fowler now 300 through 3 holes and you can build up a cushion.
Yeah.
That's almost a free ride, isn't it?
I think so, through the weekend. Like I
talk
just
about taking advantage, though.
Well, exactly. Like, what's it going to be? Is it -20 gets this thing done? It might be. I don't know.
Well, Weeksy seems to think -10 might be what gets it done if it dries out this weekend.
Well, let's hope that. I think that at least keeps it a little bit more. I don't know if the word's respectable, because it's just
pedestrian.
Yeah, exactly.
The average Joe.
I would have said normal, but
pedestrian.
I like pedestrian. Yeah, it kind of it makes you, it conjures up a vision of somebody walking down the street.
That's right.
Which is a common person, right?
Yeah.
Coming up in hour number 3, we're going to have Steve Phillips on talking about the Jays, who open a weekend in Texas tonight. Gosman going for the Jays. Later on, Chad Kelly, the Argos quarterback. The Argos open at home Sunday night against the Tiger Cats. And these two teams, when they play against each other, this is always big stuff. I mean, usually that series decides who's going to have the good season and who isn't.
Big rivalry. That's what it is.
It is.
I mean, do you lean because you're a Hamilton guy?
I have a sweater that's half Toronto and half Hamilton, but I couldn't stitch it together because the sewing machine blew up. You're not supposed to touch those two colors together. So
too busy stitching his underwear back together.
Here we go.
Dancing to the vinyls.
All right.
Start another hour. You're going to take a swipe at us again. I love it.
OverDrive, TSN 1050 and TSN 2.